So next up, we're going to check out PancreasNoWork's Every Warhammer Fantasy Faction Explained. I was going to say I actually know a bit about it, but no, I know a bit about Thanquil specifically because of the Skaven, and I really don't know much about the rest. I know there's the fantasy of elves that are there, and they aren't dark elf evil, but they're also kind of dicks, and that their leader, who they make a god, is also the big G of the environment, but you don't really know that until the end, where he actually is kind of out because the entire setting ends. I don't know much about it. I think I know more about AOS factions than fantasy. And that their funny rat men are awesome. But so stupid. Yeah, when it comes to the big factions, I don't know. So this is going to be a lot of new information for me. So let's jump right into it.
Controversial statement. I like when people get into Warhammer. It's always a joy to
Why is that controversial? Oh, maybe the joke is that it's not.
have more people to play with and interact with in the hobby space.
Yeah?
It's a new chance for me to try and convert someone, anyone, into accepting that the Eldar are actually really cool and interesting, and please.
I kind of like them. It's like they're the arrogant space elves, but they're fun, arrogant space elves. I just hate their color schemes. It's why I want to play Harlequins and just paint them up as space cowboys.
Just for 5 minutes, stop saying elf bad. But speaking of
I mean,
elves,
yes,
every time
that's the
there's a
fun part.
wave of people that first learn about Warhammer, there's always one thing in common with them. None of them realize there's more to Warhammer than Space Marines, Tyranids, and spikier Space Marines. There's
Yeah.
a whole other pair of settings that also exist, and they just fly right under
Pair?
the radar half the time. And this
Wait, pair of settings? I mean, yeah, one would be fantasy. Are we separating fantasy and AOS as different settings? Because technically one is a continuation of the other. Although now, how old is this video? Maybe that wouldn't matter. It's only a year ago, and yeah, now that after a few years of everyone selling off their fantasy models, Games Workshop is bringing back the models and a game range in fantasy as well. It's like they can make money on it. Although, I mean, the new sculpts are, I think they're actually just redos of the old one in plastic.
sucks because the best Warhammer setting is right there. Yeah, GW ended it, but then it came back. And if you don't want to, you don't even have to collect thousands of dollars of minis to play with this one. Kind of. Warhammer Fantasy has been.
Wait, kind of.
Don't even have to collect thousands of dollars of minis to play with this one.
Vermintide and Total War. Okay, yeah, that's why, because you could play the games instead. Okay.
Kind of. Warhammer Fantasy has been
Yeah.
around longer than even 40k.
Really?
It's had its ups, it's had
I
its
heard it is
downs. It got blown up for a little bit, but thanks to
The
Total
old
War,
world.
Vermintide, and the constant nagging of the community, you can once again play in the old world. With elves, dwarves, and humans as standard, but also some more out there races, such as magical frogs, rats, and Walmart shoppers. And not enough.
I have no idea who this is, but I'm just going to assume it's Slanesh related. That looks like a level of over the top that only Slanesh could get to. Oh my god. Also, Raw, technically Total War Warhammer is an AU of fantasy, so the setting did not end. Oh, really? That's actually pretty cool.
Of people know about them. Not nearly enough. And not nearly enough people learn that this setting is even a thing. So I'm going to be doing my part today.
God,
Today I'm
Starship
going to learn
Troopers
you
so
all
dumb.
about every faction in Warhammer Fantasy. Some of them had extensive army
Did they literally get at least one person from every faction in this image? I don't know, but it looks like it's really close.
lists and plot relevance. Some of them languished when unupdated army books for years on end, and some of them until recently were relegated to about 3 pages of background lore.
Which
Doesn't
one was
matter,
that?
We're doing it all. If you can conceivably consider it an actual faction, they'll be here. Think of it as a companion to this video. That one.
Do or don't, Warhammer the Old World. Oh, promoting another video of mine before this one's properly started. I'm a real YouTuber now. Yeah, we do that. Also, excuse me, I just choked my tongue. Josh, I'm going to pull up your comment. It would actually load it too. The Great Grease's Goldtooth, most influential ogre, and no, he isn't Slanesh. Wait, that was an ogre? That was more civilized than I ever thought an ogre would be. And also, for ogre standards, maybe one of the thinnest. I know what I said.
was me trying to overview the setting as a whole, and this one is about the groups of people in the
I'll
setting.
have to check out
So
the
let's
other one
dive
after
into a
this.
world of fantasy and see what all that nonsense about them having the Warhammer is all about. But you're about to start listening to me list off all kinds of factions, and do you know what you could be listening to me with? Raycon and their everyday earbuds.
Oh, also, I can't stand earbuds personally. Sorry, it's a personal thing. I just don't like them in my ear. That's why I have the big over-the-ear ones. Just more comfortable. And the sound quality is awesome. Orcs and
That's
goblins.
orc spelled with a C, by the way, not a K.
Oh, really?
But across
Oh,
the
yeah.
board, the Greenkins of Warhammer Fantasy aren't that different
I thought they had changed that, though. Huh.
from the ones in 40k, which is why we're starting with them. They like to fight, they're mushroom people, they're green. If you took an orc from 40k and put him in a greenskin tribe in fantasy, he probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Might wonder why no one has a decent shooter hanging around, but he'd be content with his life regardless. He might even be happier, because these orcs have characters like Grimgor instead of Ghazghkull. There are no thinking and tactics for Grimgor, only beating everything near him to death. The greenskins used to have some pretty different lore, being closer to D&D than anything else.
Wait, what? Really? Oh, is this a retcon, or did something happen?
They had half-orcs, and they didn't reproduce with mushroom spores. Then as time went on, that was moved away from, and eventually we came to where we are now in the old...
Okay, so it was just a retcon. And unlike this, I was going to say Star Wars, but I mean the 40k stuff with Rogue Trader, the retcons actually work as retcons. Okay.
World. That being that the orcs hopped a ride with the old ones' ships when they came to the Warhammer fantasy world.
Oh.
More on them later. From there, they naturally began spreading out across the entire world. The old ones and their servants did their best to get rid of the orcs, as they did all other races they weren't quite fond of, but you can't get rid of the orcs once they're on a planet. It's just not possible. So nowadays, if you wander around a given area long enough, chances are you'll find some greenskins kicking about, making things worse for whoever lives there. The orcs themselves are one of the biggest similarities between the two settings. The biggest guy is in charge of the tribe, and if you get a real big boss, he might be in charge of multiple tribes. And when you get a really big boss, you can get a whole proper WoW going.
Ooh.
When this happens, you usually get a whole lot of dead humans and dwarfs. Painting something red still makes it go
Wait, only humans and dwarves? I'm assuming the elves are just their own thing that no one bugs with. Because I think they're all on a different island at this point.
faster, painting it blue makes it luckier, and can block arrows from killing the blue-painted orc. And they still love looting. Not nearly.
Also, I'm being told by Martin there are Oruks in AOS. Yeah, because they didn't update Fantasy, because they didn't think they'd have to. They're probably going to change the name now that people are actually back in the setting and paying them money.
As much as in 40k, but you can always find an orc in a tribe wearing dwarf plate armor or wielding a human greatsword he grabbed off a corpse. They do have some more savage brethren who judge other orcs for using things like basic tools or digging a pit to shit in rather than just letting it drop where you stand, but aside from being...
So these are the civilized orcs, and the other ones look down on them for being too city-born. I'm not sure how to feel about that, other than this is kind of hilarious and I love it. Oi, you lost what it meant to be a good crumper. God, they would actually look at some of the orcs in 40k and go, you're way too pathetic and weak. You don't have a real fight on you. Oh my God. Also been told by Kryn, there was a goblin Wa that did beat the elves quite nicely. Not orc, goblin. That's a thing.
A bit more magical, those orcs aren't really all that different. Where you get the biggest change, though, is with the goblins. See, in 40k, grots are an entire species of plot irrelevance to the orcs. You'll get one like Makari once in a blue moon, who are allowed to be in the shadow of the spotlight of a far more famous orc, but the goblins in fantasy are...
For anyone wondering, Makari is a little grot that is allowed to help out Ghazghkull Magthraka. And he gets some funny little bits of art every now and again, but his joke is he dies and he just keeps getting brought back, except they never acknowledge he dies. But in multiple books, I think they have written him that way.
An actual threat all by themselves. Sure, they're still cowardly and will refuse a stand-up fight unless they outnumber the enemy 40-1. Sure, they're still kicked around by the orcs and are used to do all the manual construction stuff. And sure, they're still slightly smarter than the orcs, so anything resembling any actual construction or research is done by them. But every now and then, not often, but every now and then, you get a goblin who's a cut above the rest.
Oh?
And when that happens, everyone's in trouble. The goblins are cunning little buggers. They know in a straight-up fight they're gonna lose, so they'll wait till the biggest orc around is sleeping and slit his throat, or poison his food, or convince him there's something shiny in a nearby cave filled with hungry trolls. And sometimes, if they're really insane, they'll overdose on literally magic mushrooms.
I'm sorry, is this an entire army of cultist goblins? Okay, I kind of love this. Oh, man.
And when they come back to reality, they've slaughtered every orc in charge in a manic frenzy.
Damn!
Now, instead of a big green moron who just about knows which way is forward leading the army, you have someone like Skarsnik leading an orc army.
Skarsnik?
A green little Sun Tzu who's going to run circles around you and your entire military.
The fuck?
Or you can get one that pretty much just lucks into the position, like Grom the Paunch, hallowed be his girth. Instead of being clever, he...
I'm sorry. That's a goblin? I would never have believed that. If you had told me that was an orc, I would believe it. Wow.
Just got incredibly lucky and was forced to eat troll meat. Instead of exploding, which is normally what happens when you do that,
They
he
do
just
that?
kept growing alongside it. 3 things happened. 1, he got so incredibly fat he'd beat rival orcs by sitting on them. 2, he became a legend among goblins everywhere, the alpha male fantasy they all wish they could be. And 3, he nearly ended the world by sailing from the equivalent of the Middle East or Africa to the middle of the Atlantic and destabilizing the High Elves.
I'm sorry. So just with he ate troll meat, and apparently, if you do that, you blow up. And there's so much context I'm missing there. Got big, got fat, sat on things to kill them, and beat the elves and nearly end of the world because they're the ones maintaining the barrier against the all giant pile of what the fuck. Also, Josh, you mentioned that the trolls regenerate. Oh, so even the dead parts, it's not the main body, it's all of it that do that. Damn.
If you like grots but wish they could, do anything important ever, maybe take a look at the goblins. Their history really isn't anything special though, mostly because they're greenskins and what you see is what you get. Usually, they beat each other up. Every now and again, one of them beats up enough orcs that he convinces them all to go beat someone else up instead. This continues until that war boss is killed, and then the orcs disband and go back to beating each other up again. Some evil dwarfs like to use them as slaves, and when they tried to make bigger, stronger, and smarter orcs to use as slaves, they immediately learned why that was a bad idea when the orcs revolted. If you like being mean and green, you'll like the...
That sounds like an incredible time for a story. It's like, so what did the elves do? Whoa, wait, was the dwarves this time? And it immediately backfired? I kind of want to hear that story now.
The orcs. And one crucial thing I nearly forgot, they love to dance. Wurzag may be the prophet of the orc gods first, but he's a hell of a dancer second. Now let's get out of the realm of similarities and into some things fantasy really does different.
Lizardmen,
when the old ones showed up, the planet they arrived on was ideal for creating the...
Okay, just tell me this is from the Halo TV. Like, not the TV series. Like, this looks like an animation for Halo. What the Forerunners were shown to be initially. I think I recognize the style.
Ultimate weapon to fight
Chaos
chaos.
Dwarfs? Oh.
Of course, they still had to create it. So to do that, they started by moving the planet closer to the sun to warm it up, which pissed off a lot of things on it, like the dragons. Speaking of, there were a lot of races on the planet that wouldn't really like to share the room with the old ones' creations. So to help them with the legwork, as well as get rid of all those fellas, the old ones created the Lizardmen. They also created most of the other playable races in the setting, so unless otherwise stated, assume all these factions started out as the test tube babies of the old ones in one way or another.
Oh.
The Lizardmen were not this ultimate weapon against chaos, although they were still pretty good at fighting. You know how I said the orcs resisted extermination by the old ones? That was just them who managed it. Everyone else fell under a tide of angry lizards.
Oh, there were other races that didn't exist? Because I thought I heard somewhere that the Beastmen were the residuals of what did survive. Or maybe not as a race, but were just the deranged, chaotic ones. That's how they survived. Also, I'm going to pull up the comment. And Raw, you mentioned Groom was sad he could not see his feet until he realized he can get others to look at them. Also, Grimgor is Dark Orc, made by Chaos Dwarves, and the orcs are smart enough to do 2 feint attacks. Oh, they actually have tactics there. Oh, wow.
Dinosaurs or angry lizards riding dinosaurs. With that small little bit of genociding out of the way, the old ones set about making the world fit their needs. The Lizardmen were their chief assistants, and to be the best secretaries they could possibly be, the old ones made them in several different flavors. All of them with a dash of Mesoamerican cultures thrown in, because if you have the option to have Aztec lizard riding dinosaurs, you have no good reason not to take it. First you have the Slan. The Slan are the best wizards in all the world. They may...
Oh, so the Slan were not... See, I've always heard where people use the image of the Slan as the old ones, but no, apparently the old ones just made these guys specifically. And if it's explicitly the old ones in this setting, I do wonder if this would be before everything went down in 40k then, partially because this is before 40k was created, that this part of the lore might have come up. Although I don't know, because maybe it was added in later. I really don't know, and timeline might matter here.
Be big fat toad people, but the first generation ones were the ones who changed the entire planet's orbit, moving around where it needed to be in space. Moving down, one of the best wizard dinosaurs. You have no good reason.
So maybe they are the old ones?
First, you have the slan. The slan are the best wizards in all the world. They may be big fat toad people, but the first generation ones were the ones who changed the entire planet's orbit, moving around.
So they moved the planet. Now, are they the ones who were the old ones, or just working for them at this time?
Around where it needed to be in space. Moving down the generational line, they did get weaker, but that's highly relative. Second generation slan could only cause entire mountain ranges to suddenly appear at the drop of a hat. These were the lizardmen who directly worked with the old ones and delivered their messages and will to the rest.
Okay, so they are the ones who move the planet, then we're doing on behalf of the old ones, but not actually the old ones themselves. Okay.
Rest of them. Next, you have the Saurus. Stupid people might think that since the Lizardmen are a Bronze Age civilization at best, they're not much of a threat. Then an 8-foot-tall monster from the Cretaceous period clubs you to death with an obsidian axe, and you find out just how the Saurus were able to depopulate an entire planet. These were the generals of the Lizardmen armies. They were bred for war and only war. They're pretty straightforward, and all their characters have the same background of bred to kick ass, but this is Warhammer. That's a feature, not a bug, and they...
Also, I kind of find it funny that they have the sharpened teeth of the predator, but the crest they're having is taken from a design of I think a dinosaur that was specifically a herbivore, and a smaller one at that. So it's kind of just amusing to me that they're mixing different animals of herbivore and carnivores to make what are supposed to be the warrior ones. That's just amusing. I just like that.
Break it down to its simplest possible form. Next are the skinks. They're little chibi gecko axolotl things that do the day-to-day management of Lizardmen Society. You need a building planned out or to do basic diplomacy, you send the skinks. They're also skirmishers. When the trees start speaking great planese, it's the skinks doing it.
Oh.
They've even got their own god all to themselves, Sotek. It was a bit of a controversy when he came around at first, but the rest of the Lizardmen seemed content enough to let him be worshipped.
So the Lizardmen have gods who are not the old ones? Or would the old ones even count as gods in this setting, since I'm not sure they would like that or allow it, and if they're even there. Also, Ron, I'm going to pull up your comment. Malice, the planet, is a super Earth 2 times the size, and the only species to survive the purges are dragons, dragon ogres, and Firmir. Famir? And orcs. And the planet name for old world fantasy is Malice. I'm sure that has never had anything to do with it, and no name mentioned it's not an official name. Yeah, because the reason there's no 5th Chaos God in Rogue Trader on in 40k is because they had one, and they didn't have the rights to it. Yeah. I don't think those lawsuits were... I'm pretty sure those lawsuits, when they ended, did not end in Games Workshop's favor. I'm also not sure if they ever ended either, if they were just kind of just dropped by the wayside because one of the parties might have died of old age. I think it did end outside of Games Workshop's favor, though. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But also, this is like years ago and might go differently now.
We have the Croxagores. They're alligator men. They build the buildings and gator death roll all over enemy armies.
Yep.
That's it, but that's all they need to do. When Chaos first came and the old ones fled, the Lizardmen had to figure out how to not only survive, but continue the old ones' work in their absence.
So the old ones actively fled from Chaos. Oh, I was under the impression they would just be dead because the connection to 40k was explicit at this time period. People keep saying 40k and Age of Sigmar are not connected at all anymore, to which I would say, I mean, maybe not connectable, but connected, at least through narrative, is still accurate. Because characters from one setting moved into from fantasy to AOS, some of them should still be able to remember the previous connection. It feels like it's yes, but also no. It's hard to say. Because narratively, they are still connected.
Which they kind of sort of have been pulling off a little bit. They held off the invasion at the cost of almost all the first slan and most of their spawning pools, turning them into a very numerically disadvantaged race. Not that this stops them from still sometimes rampaging across the world, but they are largely held up in the jungles of Lustria nowadays, also known as South America, because Warhammer Fantasy is just Earth if someone with really shaky hands drew a map of it. They're isolationists, the slan will spend centuries at a time meditating on the few plaques the old ones have.
Oh, I just got it. It's literally turned sideways. Yeah, that would be Mexico. This would be South America. So this would make this island, this area, Brazil. Huh.
left, and they really hate when tourists come to Lustria because it's usually to steal those plaques. They're all gold, you see, because gold doesn't tarnish or rust. Convenient for writing things down in a jungle, less convenient when all the warm bloods come to steal the shiny stuff.
Which both fits with what happened IRL with people stealing South American gold, and also gold being useful for that, because that's why some of the golden or phonographs that we sent up with the Voyager were done in gold, because it wouldn't be tarnished. I'm not sure if that's a thing that would happen in space, but sure, why not? Ooh, and Duck, 1, thank you very much. 2, goddamn, man. Good to talk. Once again, what have I missed? Quite a bit, because we actually started earlier this time. And, ooh, Mars, what about Caldor Drago? Personally, I'm hoping the reason he was written out of 40k is because he explicitly got pulled into Age of Sigmar. I don't believe that will happen. But if it did, I don't care what faction he joins, I'm buying it. Because that would be hilarious. I doubt it would happen, but it would be funny. And also, yeah, you missed quite a bit, Duck. We've done a lot. And again, if there's a video you want checked out, let me know.
If you see a Lizardmen army, you're either screwed because the Great Plan dictates your death, or screwed because you're somewhere they don't think you should be. Very simple faction, but again, that's a positive. Sometimes.
Is it weird that I don't care for the Lizardman faction? But if we had Exodites in 40k who are basically a Lizardman faction, but elves riding the dinosaurs instead, I would be all for it. I don't know why that's a difference to me, but it really does matter. Just something about an elf on a dinosaur seems way more interesting than a lizard on a dinosaur to me. Just because it's probably because it's a lizard on a lizard that just feels weird. It's for the same reason that Lizardman on a woolly mammoth actually sounds like awesome, and I would love that. That sounds so incredibly cool, especially if like it's all bundled in furs. We can still see it's a lizard, but it's having to deal with heat management issues. Or if it just comes with ambient heat lamps as a resource. Why am I'm tempting myself into go and look in random people's like 3D model collections now for bullshit.
Being dino-brained is the way to go. Also known as the Imperium, but not as awful. These guys are the...
Oh, and the recommendations yesterday, Duck? I forgot what they were, but I think I did cover every recommendation I got yesterday, so probably. Unless I forgot. In which case, mention them again so I can double check.
Default protagonist faction. They're the strongest nation of men in the world, and that's no meaningless boast here, because there's actual competition they have in that department, unlike the Imperium. They formed about 2,500 years prior to the settings of modern day, when a pretty cool dude named Sigmar was born. Sigmar had a dream, uniting the scattered tribes of barbarian into one unified nation of mankind, to drive back the darkness and bring peace to the land. He did this chiefly by beating up everyone who disagreed with him, but in fairness, most of them deserved it. If this sounds familiar, let me just remind you that this guy was here first. Plus, Sigmar realized that outright...
It would be hilarious if the old lore, at least the old lore speculation that Sigmar was the emperor, and he just came over and did the same thing again. That would be funny to me. Again, I don't think that one was even close to a small bit in lore. Like some things you say, like the Caldor Drago one, it could happen because he explicitly was in fantasy in a few times. This one, though, I don't think they would do that. It's more like spiritual successor in the same way Big D in Hunter the Parenting is a spiritual successor of the TTS Emperor. Different characters, but very influenced by. Also, I'm just going to pull up the comment by Josh. Lord Croak, strongest land. Absolutely dog walks Magnus. Isn't he one that actually survived the end of the world? Pretty sure, but I could very well be wrong. Also, because it's me, I get wrong all the time. Oh, and behind the dark lore and world building of the Forever Winter. That one I haven't done. I'm going to pull that up. That's what I forgot. Remind me about that, though. I'll do that one next.
Killing everyone just because they disagree with you is perhaps a bad idea that will lead to problems later down the line, so he settled for only beating them up. Sigmar didn't just beat up people, though. He also beat up a lot of orcs. Like, a whole lot of orcs. So many orcs that the dwarfs swore eternal friendship with mankind, because if Sigmar is so kick-ass, surely the rest of humanity can't be that bad either. He united most of the tribes of man in the area, and you better believe I'll come back to the most later, and formed the Empire of Man. 50 years later, he just up and left. A little bit after that, he became a god, and the Empire soon worshipped Sigmar as the chief god of their pantheon. The Empire is pretty unique as far as fantasy factions go. Usually a fantasy setting will reach the medieval era, and then very explicitly never move past that for the next trillion years of its history.
Because I'm pretty sure that's what Brettonia, which he hasn't been on yet, is exactly that, because they're the fantasy faction that feels like fantasy, and because the Empire is more steampunk.
The Empire isn't like that. When Sigmar was doing his thing, it was barely the Iron Age. The dwarves giving them steel weapons every now and then was considered the height of technological advancement. Nowadays, 2,500 years later, the Empire has tanks. Good tanks? Yeah. Look, for a Renaissance age civilization, tanks are pretty damn impressive no matter how good they actually are.
Oddly enough, this isn't completely a historical anachronism, at least based on the time period they're more or less aping at this point, because Leonardo da Vinci designed this one. And I don't like not the stuff on it, but the very concept of a tank is something that existed within his notes. Same with helicopters. I'm not sure if he did submarines, but he did do helicopters as well. And that's the more famous one that gets noticed. So these types of things were well known well in the past. They just weren't practical or usable or buildable because the material sciences and the need for it and it can't get over roads that are made of brick and will stop at the edge of a road kind of was a bigger thing. Treads were not part of it, I think. I think it might have been wheels. But the concept of a tank like this is closer to what actually existed in the old notes. So it's actually not even too odd for having a faction at this level.
They have factories, mechanical horses, and countless other things that make you wonder if the book you're reading was put in the fantasy section by mistake. They also have wizards who scam people out of $50 for the thrill of it, politicians who constantly need to be wrangled by the one competent guy in the entire government, and enough floppy hats.
They're allowed to have one competent guy to wrangle the idiots? Oh my god, this is definitely fantasy. That never happens.
To arm the entire Holy Roman Empire with. They're still normal people, though. The three things that make the Empire great aren't genetically modified super soldiers, or lost technological secrets from a golden age, or
I thought it was the fact that they have awesome mounts.
even
Like,
the direct
literally, I thought that's
intervention
the
of their
thing.
gods. It's faith, steel, and gunpowder. A whole lot of each. Give a man a halberd, a cause to fight for, and his friends by his side, and it turns out you can push back even the most determined of evil murder Vikings time and time again. Most Warhammer fantasy books follow the Imperial characters around, and you get a good feel for just how fleshed out this land is through them. You've got the Heartlands, sure, places like Altdorf, where it's interconnected with the wider world, magic runs through the very city through its
right in the
colleges
middle,
of
yeah.
magic, and elves and dwarfs can be seen regularly. Then you have backwater shitholes like Ostermark, where the people are outnumbered by everything nearby that want
Where would Ostermark even be? Oh, it's probably so much of a backhole that it's not even on the map. There's Caradin, the Slayer Keep. Even I've heard of that one. Oh, Ostermark is the entire area. I was looking for individual cities. Yeah.
to kill them, and guns are still a scary black magic invention for a good half the population. Or Averland, whose most noticeable trait is that they hunt halflings for sport there. There's halflings in the Empire.
Are they halflings like 40k? Or not 40k, like in, like, I don't know, D&D? Or halflings like in D&D? Dark Suns, or yeah, I think it was Black Sun. Is it Dark Sun or Black Sun? But that setting where the halflings are some of the most terrifying things that you should kill on sight. If you don't know what I'm talking about, for YouTube reasons, I'm not going to explain that comment because it will get demonetized because, oh god, they deserve it.
By the way, they can vote on the next emperor because they baked a previous one a really good meal. They also had a civil war over pie. Don't be a halfling in Averland.
If someone said banana was a pie, I might stand with them on that one. It's banana cream, but never banana itself. There's just not enough flavor, and unless you really fuck around with it, it just becomes more sugar pie than anything else, which is still good, but it's not banana pie. It's a sugar pie with banana flavoring.
You're gonna decorate someone's mantelpiece sooner or later. Of course, this is still Warhammer, fantasy or not. Sure, I said it's not as awful as the Imperium, but it still has witch hunters who will burn you alive for being a wizard, or being a mutant, or just for being a bit too ugly, because that's also a sign of chaos mutation. And it's still a Renaissance age civilization. For 90% of people, this means it's a medieval civilization, but you might see more pretty statues and paintings than your ancestors did.
Admittedly, for a lot of the Imperium and 40k, that's actually kind of the same. Agri worlds can be like this, and feudal worlds are definitely like this, and some night worlds are also like this. Then others aren't. It really does depend on the planet, and there's so much variety. You can say that about almost any planet, and it could be true, because explicitly 40k doesn't go into how many planets they have or what they're all like, and the ones you see are only the ones at war. And since the Imperium hasn't fallen, most of them can't be at war, or at least not in the entire planet.
Still probably gonna die of the water making you poop too much. They're bordered by the undead, beastmen are everywhere once you leave the city limits, and worst of all, they have people who have sex with horses for neighbors. The Empire is constantly on...
What? I feel like I've missed a few steps here. The fuck? Okay, never mind. I think we know what the part was there. Okay. I was not expecting the weirdest part about a Warhammer fantasy thing to be the human image and me going, okay, now this is just too... It's a joke about the Welsh, isn't it?
The defense, from orcs, from chaos, from beastmen, which are a different kind of chaos, and really anyone else who's feeling a bit bored that day. But the average citizen of the Empire will do their part to keep the hordes at bay, and at the end of the day, they did this for 2,500 years.
Okay, actually, this is amusing. This machine coming up.
Do their part to keep the hordes at bay.
This is another design that I think did have historical relevance, and I may or may not have been built, but it was just too unwieldy compared to just a single one loading, because they still took as long to load them all. It might fire more once, but then it would take longer to load all of them in, so a single cannon was more chosen. But I think this design is actually something there are, not quite this, but there were designs for as a possibility.
And at the end of the day, they did this for 2,500 years until the authors decided reality itself had to go, which is a pretty good track record. They're a human, relatable nation, like if the Imperial Guard got to actually be the main characters of 40K.
Yeah, that'll never happen.
9001, model on sale now for $60. It's grounded with people...
Remember when a model for $60 was considered expensive? It still is, but now it's almost worse sometimes. I'm not even sure that's a joke at this point. It might actually be accurate. And if you watch this in the future from the day I record it, it probably is actually an understatement. Also, Raw, you mentioned, I am an Empire man in total war due to its flexibility. Favorite steam tanks, hypergriffs, riflemen, and outriders. Horsemen with grenade... They have horsemen with grenade launchers. God damn! That's nice. Also, this is very broken right now, so I don't know when it broke. I know it has missed a few because it should have contacted both of these. Yeah, sorry about that. Ogren guns existed, but Grapeshot was more practical. Damn. And yeah, it would be.
Having normal struggles, but also fantastical, with wizards and monsters being everywhere. They do have one ultimate ace in the hole, though. The reigning emperor, Karl Franz.
Yeah.
The best statesman in the old world, the guy who wields the Warhammer. You know, the one, the actual...
Because, yeah, Warhammer was initially named after him holding a Warhammer. Warhammer 40K is still keeping the name of the thing he wears. Wields. I word sometimes.
Real-life Warhammer logo. That's his, and he's very good at using it. He's the kind of politician who could convince you into giving him everything you own and leave you thinking you got the better deal, but also the kind of person who wouldn't do that to you. He's got everyone's interest at heart, and overall, this guy's the best emperor in Warhammer. Not Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer in general. Kiss my ass, corpse worshippers. This one can walk, talk, and beat you to death in the name of the Empire.
I mean, technically, the last one can still do that by proxy, but not the first two, even by proxy, explicitly because they are not allowed. Oh, yeah. And Martin, you're mentioning the model is currently watching Steam with you. I don't even know which model you're talking about. I'm going to be jealous regardless because all of the models are cool.
If you like relatable folk with a touch of the fantastic, Sigmar and his people have your back. But I did say most tribes are united by Sigmar. Unfortunately, a couple weren't able to be integrated for one reason or another.
Other than Brettonia, what else was there?
I like first.
Kislev. These I've heard of.
All of Eastern Europe thrown into a pot and mixed to boiling until it coagulated into one slop.
The only thing I know about Kislev is ice, bears, and that Archon, the Ever-Chosen, came from them.
Like specialty stew. They live in a frozen hellhole, which is also their...
Although I could be wrong about that. I thought he did, but I'm not actually sure that's correct either.
Country's greatest defense, they wear thick fur pelts, they have winged hussars. They also squat in the middle of a battlefield, because such is the natural state of the Kislevite. And vodka. Even the dwarfs and their genetically ingrained alcoholism respect the drinking skills of a Kislevite. Kislev's job in the setting is to face tank chaos invasions before they get to the Empire of Man, which they do pretty well. Half their cities are torn down in the process, but they're a hardy bunch. They walk into the winter snow, and when everyone occupying their land freezes to death, come back in and rebuild.
That would do it.
Is different from the empires, and they view them as weak southerners, but the two nations are still staunch allies. Mostly because when the forces of actual hell are your neighbors, anyone else is going to be a good friend. They're led by the Tsar or Tsarina of Kislev, because GW was worried you wouldn't understand which region this place is based off of.
My god, it's based on Turkey. You know, there's probably someone out there typing a very angry note. I'm just going to let them go for it. And Corinne is mentioning it's Polish Russia. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's literally the Tsarina. Although it would be weird if they just called it the Tsar, but it actually was a Tsarina. But I guess it's fantasy. Who cares?
Many times, and indeed the last one before the world blew up, this was an ice witch, a handy person to have running your country when a raging
So it actually
blizzard
been
is
multiple
considered a
then.
mild day.
Oh.
You still can't play as Kislev in the old world, thank you GW for that extreme blue balling, but they had some pretty heavy redesigns, and a lot of the marketing for the old world did at one point feature Kislev.
Wait, they had marketing for it? Because GW doesn't want to do anything that would have female characters, because in, I think, 97, they did a QA test of their player base, and they just wouldn't buy female characters because they wanted big, bulky, roided men. Why does it feel like I'm making a reference to the YMCA? The song specifically. I don't know, but it does feel like the Rambo fatigue set in. Because now it's like, ah, cool, neat faction, let's do that. But there was definitely, like, a lot of the reason wasn't because they didn't like those characters. It's because they noticed that people would buy Imperial Guard units and complain about the female head sculpts. Granted, having looked at the female head sculpts and the male head sculpts, and any sculpt at all for the initial heads, they should have complained harder about everyone. Yeah, some of the old models were, yeah.
Hoping GW realizes that winged hussars riding bears is something people are interested in.
That does look
Shame
cool.
that sentence needs to be said. I don't know why anyone would ever need to be told that.
I mentioned the elves on a bear. Yeah.
Blat.
Also, this isn't 40k? Oh, I know. But 40k is the one that set the precedent for them. And they did that in multiple factions, with the exception being Lord of the Rings, which actually kept their company alive when 40k hadn't taken off yet. And I think Age of Sigmar wasn't doing as hot. Because for a while, GW survived on Lord of the Rings, which I just think is funny.
These are those people who have sex with horses. When Sigmar was uniting everyone, they refused to join him, because obviously they were too good to join him. Did they have some super special magical secret, or a technology that could let them surpass the fledgling empire, or some other race in the whole? No, but they copied the elves' homework and our French, so they decided...
Oh, they're the French faction? Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And they copied the elves' homework? Because it's the knight aesthetic without the stupid helmets. And yeah, I'm going to say that regardless. And even as a Custodes player whose helmets are basically just a version of the giant pointy hat that elves wear. Yeah, I can't stand the pointy helmets. They just look so stupid to me.
Decided they were too good to shack up with a future god and went it alone. Brettonia looked at all the cool advancements the Empire was making, how it was a dynamic nation in a genre that usually gets to the medieval era and then freezes like it's going into cryo-sleep, and said no, we will not be doing that. We will be staying as medieval land. It is mandated by the government that technology will not advance, that society will never have any major upheavals, and that everything is just perfect the way it is.
Now this is the part I'm not entirely sure about, and I've only heard a bit about how they worship the lady to extreme levels, and we're not going to talk about what happened to them in HOS, which is just a stupid asshole. But was that actually a thing where they're explicitly keeping the anachronism, or is he just letting his "I don't like Brettonia" thing come through? I actually don't know. Also, I'm just going to pull this up here. Raw. I am an empire. Wrong one. Just to be clear, they do not make love to horses. He just hates them for justifiable reasons. Yeah, I saw that. It's one of the reasons I'm asking about this. Although there's a lag, so you might not have heard me say that yet. But yeah, I'm honestly wondering if is it actually like they're explicitly not moving forward for those reasons, or is it just they're not because that's the setting? And because I mentioned, he just said both and yes from multiple people. Okay.
Like that old decree the Pope made that declared crossbows were a blasphemy.
Liam, technically, Brettonia is-ish around the ghouls. Yeah. Not the vampires, just the ghouls, the delusional ones. They were some of the people who survived, and it got really twisted. I don't know if it's Brettonia whole or some of the people from it or other locations, but I think it did include a few at least.
This weapon taken to be an
Which is
entire
stupid
society's philosophy. Brettonia is all about knights. Baby knights proving themselves.
Oh yeah, it's supposed to be like the King Arthur Knight, specifically the Green Knight right there. I mean, if they want to steal the lore, might as well.
Magical knights defending the realm and saving damsels, knights leading the country to further the goals and interests of the rest of the knights. Imagine King Arthur, That's it. Just imagine King Arthur
But French! Which is basically Lancelot.
stretched out to be a whole faction. The in-universe justification is that they saw high elf cavalry and just ran with the concept. Out of universe, it's just King Arthur and every medieval stereotype thrown together. You could, admittedly, say the same thing about the Empire and the Holy Roman Empire, or Kislev in Eastern Europe, but those are eras and places fantasy writers don't usually copy wholesale, so they get a pass from me. Brettonia is the land of almost every fantasy setting ever conceived since Lord of the Rings, and it shows. Unfortunately, they can afford to do all of this fantasy stasis, because an elf goddess is playing them like a fiddle. Their precious Lady of the Lake, also known as the Elf Goddess of Magic, chooses some super special knights to become Grail Knights. They sip from her chalice of bathwater, and when the now Grail Knight emerges, they're like supercharged D&D paladins.
So let me get this straight. They got an elf god who gives a bunch of guys who love her bathwater. If I had heard this a few years ago, I think that's ridiculous. No one would do that. It's not a few years ago. I'm pretty sure there is a significant amount of people going, how do I sign up? Ugh. Yep.
Bullets are an inconvenience, their armor is magically toughened, and their mounts never tire, so until the
Good
Empire
reasons.
invents the Gatling gun, they're able to keep being aggressive backwater dickweeds. In older lore they were tolerable, but in modern lore someone must have felt they weren't angsty enough and made them nice and extra oppressive. The peasants are honored if the noble allows them to have 3 pennies a week instead of 2, ladies who aren't magical are property because medieval times, and social mobility is a punchline. I hope you like medieval medicine. The Empire's medicine already isn't that great. Brettonia
Medieval medicine when the leeches were the best option. Because everything else sometimes was worse. Like, drink mercury.
medicine is the kind of thing that has a 300% fatality rate. And horses. Everyone has a horse. Even the lowliest peasants have a horse. A horse that...
Seriously? Just to throw it out there, the reason people could be knights, there were a few different options. One, you were called a knight because you were rich enough to be one. Or 2, you had a horse. Which meant you were rich enough to be a knight, so someone probably made you a noble already. Yeah, knights were mounted cavalry. But then there's... How to be a knight does actually depend on where you're at and how to do it. But generally, it's either mounted cavalry, was a person in armor on horseback, or you were a rich person who got the title. And then there's also places where it's actually a form of nobility that you can be given, but also wasn't a very historical one. It wasn't really given land, but it was a way to at least say you were part of nobility without being part of the riffraff. But generally, those are the most accepted ones. So everyone having a horse is like, oh, shit.
more often than not eats and lives better than they do. I like horses, but I don't like them that much. If you've ever been to medieval times and made that your entire personality, Brettonia is a good faction for you. Because God is real and hates me, they're also one of the starter factions of the old world, so getting into Warhammer Fantasy nowadays is pound for pound fairly easily done with Brettonia.
Oh yeah, they did do a starter box for Warhammer Fantasy. I completely forgot about that. Like, unironically, I forgot they released a new one. How did I forget that? Because this is during the time period where I was not looking at it because I realized, how much does that cost? Yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah, in all honesty, pick them if you like them. It is on some level cool, because for as much shit as I was giving them for being generic and bland knights, knights are cool. There's a reason every 5-year-old wants to be a knight and not a Landsknecht. I mean, for God's sakes, just trying to say that word is difficult.
Cathay.
The other army GW has refused to put...
I mean, technically, this thing in the background has a model now. It looks cool. Unless it's something else completely I'm thinking about.
Put onto the tabletop, despite already having a direct hand in reworking them for Total War. Did you know there's a fully fleshed out Cathayan army book for GW developed? You can't have it, because fun's not allowed. This is a shame, because Cathay is awesome. Dragons are also awesome. Cathay agrees, because they're ruled by immortal dragons, who the Cathayans follow at every whim. Fantasy China is a magical place, and one of the few places in the entire planet.
It actually is even weirder, because I know they're trying to sell their game internationally. Fantasy China seems like it would do a great job, as long as they don't do the stupid with it. Never mind, this probably came out in the 90s, where Games Workshop was notorious, 90s and early 2000s, where they were notorious for doing explicitly stupid. I started well after Games Workshop had decided, hey, maybe we should listen to people. And I don't mean like they're not listening to the fans now. I mean, they'll do something. It's stupid. Everyone hates it. It makes something unplayable. No one buys it. And they don't understand why no one buys it. And they never find out and they do it again. For everything I might give Games Workshop shit about, they do seem better than some of things I've heard about what they used to be like. Not saying they're good, but that it was a very low bar. Also, I'm just going to pull up this comment on a page that crashed. And Raw, unless you're a dictat, I'm not sure what that is, of a Grail Knight, you can never be allowed to become a knight. There are exceptions, but only for them, not their family. Oh. I'm assuming that's the equivalent of a, like, what is it? A apprentice or a squire for it then? I'm not entirely sure what that word is. Also, Cathay just means China? Oh, makes sense. 150 parts for one model. Intimidated yet? Dude, I built a knight. Not even one of the big ones. That's basically half of it. As long as they're well done and not all broken. Because I have seen some of the older sculpts where, here's all the parts. None of them fit. Oh, and it was actually supposed to be the word descendant. That actually makes a lot of sense, unfortunately, for a feudal society where you want to make sure the power is concentrated. So that kind of makes sense. Yeah. It sucked to build, but if you do have it, there was 170 parts. Damn.
That might not be a terrible one to live in. Every now and again, it does what actual China used to do and implodes, and sure, those ruling dragons get along like all siblings do, i.e. barely at all, but in day-to-day life, not a bad place. And it always comes back together after imploding, usually after Mommy and Daddy Dragon come back to kick everyone's heads in until they start behaving again.
So it actually was sibling dragons with parent dragons who left the siblings to run it. Yeah, this makes perfect sense.
It is, like I said, just fantasy medieval China, but that is a compliment. You know those terracotta soldiers? What if they were animated by magic and also 100 feet tall? Are you a 40k fan? Imagine if the Primarchs weren't utter morons and failures almost to a man. Because that's Cathay. Again, for reasons I will never understand, we don't have them yet in tabletop. But
I'm pretty sure they are releasing this faction, or at least this one specific model, because I'm almost certain I've seen it. Unless I'm completely and utterly just blindsiding myself and completely wrong and just don't realize it, which is entirely possible. But I swear to God, I've seen them release a picture that they're going to sell this model.
Total War does, and by God.
I'm not sure if it was Age of Sigmar they're bringing them back, or it's fantasy and they're just reintroducing it. Or introducing it technically for the first time either way.
Is it fun to play as Cathay? The Silk Road was prosperous in real life, and it's prosperous in Warhammer, so if...
Also, just random bullshit aside, the Silk Road was not actually one time period, and it's a lot older than we thought, because there's actually information and things we're finding out now where the Silk Road, or what became the Silk Road, was also involved in spice trading from the Bronze Age prior to the collapse. So that kind of trade was going on way longer than most people think. And since most people don't know about it, I wouldn't be surprised if it's even longer.
/ when they finally come...
Also, according to Raw, they released Cathay a year after the video was released. And this video is a year old. Oh no, September 6, 2024. So literally, what, 5 months ago? 4 months ago. 3 to 4 months ago. Not bad. And Josh, you mentioned Cathay is out now? Yeah. Was it for Old World or Age of Sigmar? I'm assuming Old World, but I could be wrong. And China did trade with Rome? Oh yeah, but also a lot more than just Rome, and well before that as well. Like, they were trading with some of the early empires, like Mycenaean Greece trading. Some of the locations in, I think it was the Arabian Peninsula. Like, there's bits of it where spices were moving around from Africa. There was huge trade networks. It's actually kind of insane.
Come out, prepare to show the world why China was for a good 1,000 years the most prosperous.
And be told it's Old World it came out for?
It's even better here because this Great Wall has magical dragon ladies guarding it. Oh,
what?
Cathay is also near the countries of Nippon, Ind, and Koresh. Nippon is Japan, Ind is India, and Koresh is Southeast Asia. I'm not giving...
Yeah, it's basically badly drawn America. I see it. Or not America, badly drawn world map. And there's the badly drawn America probably over there.
Them their own spots because no one cares about them, and I can't bring myself to either. That's it for the non-chaotic living humans, but that doesn't mean we're done talking about humans. The next few ones just don't have a heartbeat. Or
what?
Skin.
Oh, the vampire. Okay,
These are
that
the
makes
bad
sense.
guys when chaos has taken a break. Imagine Dracula, if you will. Now imagine Dracula if he had a 100,000-strong army of zombies, skeletons, lesser vampires, and pretty much anything else that you could find at a Spirit Halloween.
Yep.
The total history of the vampires stretches back thousands of years, but for the purposes of this video,
know
we're
that's
only going to go
Nagash.
back a few hundred. We go to a fella named Vlad von Karstein, because if you haven't caught on yet, this setting is allergic to subtlety.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of GW stuff early on was not subtle in the slightest. It's not a 40k video, but I will always go back to the 40k character, Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau. Yeah. Always going to point it out. That is a real character that has technically never been retconned. Just going to throw it up there.
He showed up to the very on-the-nose Empire province of Sylvania, which was a horrible place to live. It was covered in swamps, the people were dumb and afraid of scary monsters, and because this setting is what it is, they weren't even wrong to be so. When a
Oh god, it's Florida. Yeah, that makes sense. Horrible place.
peasant in real life says the witch made their family ill with the plague, it's baseless superstition. When a peasant in Warhammer says that, there's a good chance they're right. When a Sylvanian peasant says that, they are right. Vlad shows up to this province, marries the daughter of the ruling noble to become its next ruler, and despite being a blood-sucking vampire, this place sucked so hard it was a marked improvement. Even better, him and his wife Isabel
The vampire improved things. That is a mark against it. Wow.
actually loved each other. They had vampire kids like Conrad von Karstein, who was...
Wait, they can actually... Really? I thought it was just the name of they sired someone else, but no, they just flat out had kids. Magic. Let's just go with that.
insane and liked to twist the heads off of peasants, and Manfred von Karstein, who was the worst. Of course, this wouldn't be Warhammer if everyone was just nice and peaceful, so one day Vlad had a brilliant idea. What if he was the Emperor? He could live forever and usher in an eternal age of prosperity, mostly for vampires, but for some of the people too. So he tried to become the Emperor. At gunpoint. Zombie point more like, but 100,000 zombies is a lot more effective than most Renaissance age guns were.
Yeah.
He failed, but the damage was done. Him, his wife, and their children spread vampirism across the Empire. Now Sylvania is barely even considered a part of it, and everyone does their best to ignore it. This is probably a bad move.
Wait. It's actually still technically part of the Empire? Oh. I was expecting it to be like, and then we made a point to come back and kill everyone. But no, technically it's still part of the Empire. Does that mean there's rules to ally vampires into it? That'd be kind of interesting.
Because every few decades some vampire likes to try their hand at raising a massive undead army to take over the Empire with. They all fail, but they're very murderous. Them failing means the Empire's population only drops by 20% instead of 100%. Just watch.
Also, I'm being told that in setting, actually I'll pull this comment up because I think it is quite interesting on the context. Here we go. According to Tudor, vampires here are the result of an imperfect recreation of an elixir of immortality. They do not count as elector counts. Oh, okay. And weren't vamps caused by Nagash? No. Maybe Nagash to the elixir of immortality. I don't know. And what would a correctly done one would look like? I have no idea. Yeah, Vlad does still want the throne if he is alive, but no rules to ally vamps. Disappointing. That would be a kind of fun little introduction then.
The first episode of Castlevania if you somehow haven't, for what it's like when the Midnight Aristocracy goes to war. There's a lot of vampires to choose from, though, to get your specific undead needs satisfied.
Oh?
The von Karsteins are the classic vampires, who want to suck your blood and rule over the night. The Lamians are a vampire KGB, with spy networks in pretty much every place on the planet. Except Lustria, probably. The lizards don't take kindly to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The Shagoy are what happens if your average Florida resident became a vampire.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, I'm pretty sure I've seen that exact necklace on people just living down there unironically.
Necrocs are evil wizards, and the Blood Dragons are a heavy metal album cover. If you thought it was kick-ass when Dracula sent the forces of hell to wreak havoc on the living, you'll love the vampire counts. But I did mention that some of the undead don't have skin, and vampires usually have that at least. For those fellas, we need to go further south.
Oh? Oh, these guys I've heard of.
Ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt. You now understand the basics of the Tomb Kings. Once upon a time, thousands of years in the past, the lands of Nehekara were prosperous. They had regular contact with their gods, magical constructs to defend themselves with, and when they had a good king like Setra, they would sometimes go on to conquer half the world.
I'm assuming they then had a bad king who really fucked it up. Also, no name, you mentioned their kids are the turned ones. Oh, okay. So they had kids and they just turned people. They didn't actually have kids. They just made kids. Technically, both sentences work. Okay.
Then a fella named Nagash was born. He's awful. This man...
Wait, is that what Nagash looked like as a human? Yeah, they're very much going on, this is the Mummy. Like, the movie. They had to have done that. He had to come out of this... No, wait. When was Nagash created in setting? Because the Mummy was 90s. I'm pretty sure fantasy started in the 80s. If not the late 80s, but still. Depending on when his character was created, he might have literally just been, this is the Mummy. I have absolutely no idea. Oh, the timing on that would be... It could also just be ironically close, but I could be wrong. Oh.
Was a monster through and through. He's really smart, though. Smart enough to capture dark elves and force them to teach him dark magic, which usually humans can't do. Smart enough to invent necromancy with what he learned. Smart enough to overthrow his brother, the king, and take over most of the land with his undead forces. And he's also quite powerful with his magic. He was eventually overthrown and cast into the desert where he died, but he invented necromancy. Death is a suggestion for him. Such is his power. When he inevitably came back...
And the problem with Nagash is they didn't kill him sooner. Like before he had magic. Yeah, Nagash is technically anti-chaos. I say technically because I swear to God, fantasy is at the point where, sorry, AOS at least is, oh dear God, why is Nagash the one we're having to deal with when we should all be fighting chaos? And then also, why is it looking like chaos sometimes might be the better faction to ally with against Nagash? I'm not sure if that's entirely accurate, but it does feel that way sometimes.
He discovered someone had stolen his research notes and used them to make vampires. He made those vampires his generals, and no, they didn't have a choice in the matter, and then decided ruling just Nehekara with undead wasn't enough. So he formed a plan to kill everyone in the region at once, resurrect every corpse on the planet, and take over the world with his World War Z undead army. Part 1 of the plan went off without a hitch. It was only through the intervention of the Skaven, who I promise you will love, and the last living dude in the region, which kept most of Part 2 from happening.
I'm sorry. The Skaven, you know, the people who in AOS finally got the big chaos god of the Horned Rat, saved the world. I was almost half joking about the entire ally with chaos against him. I didn't realize I would then get an example of technically what is exactly that happening. Okay. This is a thing.
Then everyone in Nehekara promptly stood back up, realized their hearts were no longer beating, but they were still standing, and things got messy. Imagine Game of Thrones before it became horrible, with all the political fighting over who gets to be king. Now imagine...
Oh, is the political fighting the horrible part, or is the horrible part where they start making decisions because they don't want to follow the books that aren't written yet? It could go either way.
In Game of Thrones, if every single person who was ever the rightful king was now alive at the same time fighting...
And also, if J.R.R. Martin had to decide to explicitly change his endings and to tell people later that he did it because people guessed what he was going to do, because he accurately foreshadowed things. I swear, he's just not going to write the end of the book because, well, everyone guessed every ending he wanted to write because he foreshadowed them correctly. As you're supposed to if you use foreshadowing right. Yeah, the fact that he actually came out and said he's changed his endings because he didn't want people to guess it just makes me pissed at him, because that is a stupid, petty reason.
Over what was their throne. Not they believed it to be their throne, or they wanted it to be their throne, it was the throne they sat on once upon a time. And also they can respawn. And also, most common people were mindless undead skeletons who had the flesh flayed from their bones with the desert winds and could only follow basic orders, like kill that guy who thinks he's the real king. This does not a stable nation make. Luckily, the priest woke up that Cetra guy, who cock-slapped everyone until they started behaving again.
Oh.
Now the Tomb Kings no longer have skin, have no clear path to achieve immortal bodies to feel with again that they so crave, and no longer have the backing of their very gods. Fortunately for them, death is more of a suggestion. They can still use magic, even if not quite as good as it was when the gods were helping, and they now have eternity to do whatever they want, as long as it...
So basically, they're the Necrons if the Necrons actually stuck as Egyptian-themed and undead, as opposed to robots that feel undead but sometimes don't, or Terminators but sometimes don't. I'll say it would be kind of cool if they actually got the flesh back because they can feel as undead flesh. That would be a very fascinating change. Because at that point, are they even dead?
Doesn't involve some sort of physical sensation. Sometimes they still fight amongst each other, sometimes they spend their newfound immortality pursuing whatever hobbies they want, and sometimes they sail all the way from Egypt to Sweden and burn half of it to the ground because someone stole their
There's fantasy Sweden? Yeah, sure. Why not at this point? I just assume they're all there.
hat. And on the rarest of
Also, I'm being told it was J.R.R. Martin as opposed to G.R.R. Tolkien. I got them backwards, didn't I? It's George R.R. Martin. J.R.R. is Tolkien. Also, that's not just a right now problem. I've been doing that incorrectly for years now, and it's never been something I can get over, even when it's pointed out to me. I'm going to do it again. Thank you for letting me know, because at least one time I might get it correct. Yeah. Also, Necro, the show writers changed plot stuff because people guessed them, not the author. No, Martin has come out and mentioned that some of the people he wrote about explicitly aren't going to do certain things now because people guessed what he was about to do. This is not the show writers. I'm explicitly talking about Martin. The show writers also doing that doesn't surprise me, and I wouldn't be surprised if he talked to them about that because that's his shtick. I actually get annoyed about that. But also, I don't care enough to really care, so it's like, it's a little annoying, but it's like a stub toe would be more annoying to me. It's one of those, type annoyances.
occasions, a tomb queen will tell a strapping young lad that if they still had functional genitals, she'd fuck him so hard the experience would kill him. They're very fun. They're true neutral to the core.
I paused right before a very interesting statement. Okay. That is apparently a thing.
Some of them want conquest, some of them just want to find new hobbies, some hate the living out of jealousy, some don't care either way as long as they serve, and some go out of their way to find human members to recruit for their court because it reminds them of what they've lost. If you can think of a motivation, there's a Tomb King that has it. It's a very simple thing to know if the Tomb Kings are for you or not. Do you like the Mummy? Do you like ancient Egypt? Have you ever wondered what it'd be like if the Sphinx came to life and started crushing people like Godzilla? Tomb Kings are perfect for you then. And hey, look at that. They're the other starter faction for the old world. Now you can get into fantasy proper without people like me dismissively calling you a horse molester.
God, it's going back to the horses again. Oh, god damn it.
So now we can leave this region of the world and indeed humanity, and I have forgotten 4 human nations that deserve at least a little bit of credit.
There's others? Tila, Estella, Border Princes, Arabe, the Nobodies. I've heard of the Border Princes, but I also thought that was just a reference to people in the Empire who were just not powerful. I didn't realize they were actually a different faction.
Tylea is Italy during medieval/Renaissance times, so it's thousands of city-states smushed into one country.
And they probably all hate each other and fight exclusively amongst themselves.
It's right next to the Skaven capital. There are worse places to live. Estalia is...
Yeah, because the Skaven are probably as self-defeating as anything else, so at least that way you don't have to worry about them actually getting organized.
Spain without the colonial empire. Both of these places say they're the first civilized nation in the old world, which the empire disputes. The border princes are the land of whatever the hell you want it to be. It is an excuse to make your own homebrew army, and they fight orcs more than anything. Most of the people there are either fleeing from the empire, leaving the empire in a futile attempt to make it big, and petty nobles. Araby...
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, I'm going to pull up your comment. So, Ra, you mentioned Queen Kahala, really like Felix, who is a ladies' man. In Total War, he can increase population growth in his tech tree for each province he is in. Okay, that's a thing they included.
Is exactly what you think it is. Turn Aladdin into a wargame faction, but only a background faction. And if you think that's me being dismissive of it, do please read about Sultan Jafar's military campaign against the old world. It's actually got advanced medicine, science...
Sultan... It's basically just Disney. And I'm assuming this part of fantasy lore came out after the Aladdin books. The Aladdin movie came out early in the 90s, but I actually don't know what year.
science and magical practices and theories, but I can guarantee the only thing you're going to remember about this place
Jafar.
is Sultan Jafar. We're going to
Elves.
start by clumping all the elves together, because their backstory
Nah, we're stopping at this one. Oh, God. I think we'll move on. Like, we got the men and the dead men done. We'll move on to the elves next time, because I want to at least do one more thing, but that's just... Oh, my God. I will admit, I'm actually looking forward to the elves, because I do kind of like the elven factions. I don't play elves. I don't collect elves, but it's one of those factions where I'm always like, if it's fantasy, if it's AOS, if it's Space Marine stuff and not Space... Wow, 40k instead of Space Marine. Wow, I forgot what it's called. I would like to get into elves. I just haven't, ever, for some reason. But this is all cool, man. I just... Still, the entire... Okay, the Skaven saved the world from Nagash is still going to be something I don't know how to feel about. I'm not going to figure that out either anytime soon. It's just, yeah. Okay. Still not sure how to feel about that. That's going to take me a while. There's probably, I hope, a video he's done specifically on that, because that seems like something you should probably talk about. Oh, God. Also, Martin's mentioning in the chat, he has 3,000 points of painted Lumineth. Damn. That's a lot of pointy ears. Either way, you guys know the deal. There's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. I'll definitely finish this later, because I want to see what the hell is happening next. I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.